Now the second choice, owned by the Portland Trail Blazers. Let's go to the commissioner, David Stern.
Portland selects.
You're listening to WNYC. Guys, can you believe it's already 1984?
1984. A defining year in NBA history. It was the 80s, a colorful decade that marked the resurgence of the league. That year's finals, a dream matchup. Magic Johnson's Lakers versus Larry Bird's Celtics. Yes, the nightmare of the 1970s was over. With Magic and Bird at the forefront, the NBA had regained prominence. But contrary to popular belief, the league's popularity was far from uncontested.
Back in that era, basketball was not as big, of course, as it is today. Just as an example, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, those basketball games were played after the nightly news.
We keep hearing about the glory days of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, but even back then, with them, the NBA Finals were being shown on delay. They were shown on tape. They weren't shown live on broadcast.
Muhammad Ali opening up.
When I was first starting as a journalist in the 1970s, the sports writers here in America, all they wanted to cover was baseball, boxing, and horse racing. Those were the three big sports. Nobody really cared about basketball at all. You have to remember, back then, these athletes in the NBA were far more accessible to us reporters because they were trying to sell the product still. But back then, you know, somebody like me who covered the league regularly could just get on the telephone and call any athlete in the league pretty much when they were at a hotel or whatever and speak to them at length. And that included Michael Jordan. That included Charles Barkley. There was a sense of the players were still trying to sell the product.
After steering the NBA away from financial disaster, Commissioner Larry O'Brien stepped down in 1984. His successor, David Stern, a sharp and ambitious lawyer. Stern wasn't satisfied with just Bird and Magic. He wanted more star power. If only fate could lend a hand.
You know, David Stern comes in and it's quite a challenge actually to get this thing going. And then, you know, God gifted him the 1984 draft.
In 1984, the NBA draft, a tradition adapted from the NFL in 1935, was still a modest event followed by a small circle of enthusiasts. But David Stern had a vision. That year, he turned it into a televised spectacle, foreshadowing its transformation into a grand event.
Forum in New York City. The USA Network presents the 1984 NBA. 3 hours, the USA Cable Network wishes you to join us.
We paid USA Network to produce the draft. That's how difficult it was to get an audience for it.
The rules back then? Simple, yet impactful. The first pick was decided by a coin toss between the two worst teams from each conference. And as history shows, luck often writes the story. In 1969, a coin toss helped the Milwaukee Bucks snag Kareem Abdul-Jabbar from the Phoenix Suns. The system had its merits, but wasn't free of controversy, like the infamous strategy of tanking, where teams lose deliberately to secure higher draft positions. One team had mastered this tactic, the Houston Rockets. In 1984, Houston found itself flipping a coin with the Portland Trail Blazers for the coveted first pick. Unlike the Rockets, who had earned their position through poor performance, Portland's spot was the result of a trade made 3 years earlier with the Indiana Pacers. For the very last time in NBA history, a coin would decide what the future holds.
Portland calls tails. Here goes the flip. Heads it is.
You have such a problem now. You have two of the best big men to come out of college in the last 15 years. Such a problem you should have. Hakeem will be your pick? Yes, no question.
Hakeem Olajuwon was the sure shot in that draft. He was the only sure franchise player in that draft. After that, you know, the thinking back then was you need a center. It was a center-oriented league back then.
3 straight trips to the Final Four made pro scouts rave over his considerable skills.
There's the lob to Olajuwon.
Young into Olajuwon. He's going
going to put it up.
Standing tall at the top of the 1984 draft class was Hakeem Olajuwon, a Nigerian star from the University of Houston. The Rockets won the toss and eagerly paired Olajuwon with young giant Ralph Sampson to create a formidable duo. Next in line were the Portland Trail Blazers. Portland had a rich basketball history. Founded in 1970 in the serene and picturesque state of Oregon, the Trailblazers quickly captured the hearts of fans. Champion in 1977, the team rarely missed the playoffs. By 1984, they had Clyde Drexler, a young and dynamic shooting guard. And the draft was their chance to find him a perfect complement.
What do you look for when you go looking for these basketball players?
Well, it's a great question and not one that's easily answered in a very quick way. You obviously try to find the best physical players you can find.
Robert Parrish on the Celtics was a key element. Moses Malone with the 76ers. These were players who dominated, and the sense was you build your team around the center. So given that, the idea of drafting a shooting guard at the number 2 spot seemed a bit precocious.
I'm thrilled that we'll be having the opportunity to draft the second best player in the college draft.
I think this is one of the best crops in recent years. It is very unusual that you will get 6 potential superstars.
Enter Sam Bowie. Towering at 7'1", the University of Kentucky center had long been in the spotlight, earning accolades in high school and college for his mobility, aggression, and technical prowess.
That's young. Blocked by Bowie. The blue. Bowie now has 61 blocks. There's the lob, and there's the dunk.
Yet, his resume had a glaring flaw. Injuries had forced him to miss 2 full college seasons.
I've been waiting for almost 2 years now, and everybody was saying if there's a healthy Sam Bowie, my pro career is there. But right now, I'm just worried about getting this cast off and just being able to walk like a regular person.
Well, he wasn't compared to him, really. It was like apples and oranges. Bowie was a center, obviously, and he had some injury problems already.
At guard for North Carolina, 6'5", a freshman from Wilmington, North Carolina, number 23, Michael Jordan. Good vision of the floor by Jordan.
Trying to get that ball inside. Michael Jordan, the young freshman. Doherty to Jordan, sprigs out on him. Good coverage defensively. The tie, 18. Shot, Jordan, Michael Jordan.
I was, 50-50, and I talked to Coach this morning, and, I felt that would be better for me to start now while I'm young.
Another standout prospect was Michael Jordan, a prolific scorer from North Carolina's Tar Heels. While undeniably talented, few foresaw Jordan becoming a global icon.
You also have to remember that Michael Jordan played for Dean Smith in college, okay? And Dean Smith kept a pretty tight cap on his players. He wasn't going to let Michael Jordan be Michael Jordan, really. And so, Jordan, he didn't light up the college ranks, really. When he was playing college, you couldn't really see the true Michael Jordan. He was forced to play a very tight system, and it required a scout with a very good eye to be able to sort of project what kind of player Michael Jordan could be if given that kind of freedom that he didn't have at North Carolina.
For Portland, the decision was between the flashy yet redundant Jordan, who played the same position as Drexler, and the promising big man, Sam Bowie.
They would have, of course, taken Olajuwon first. They lost the coin flip, Portland, and then they said, we still have to get a center. We don't need Michael Jordan. We have Clyde Drexler, who pretty much played the same position and was quite a star in his own right. So they were trying, as coach and general manager of the Blazers used to say, we were trying to paint a Picasso here. We were trying to finish a Picasso. So they thought the one position that they desperately needed was a top center.
Portland selects Sam Bowie, University of Kentucky.
Sam Bowie, the young man who came back from a stress fracture injury, the left shin bone. He was out for 2 seasons, redshirted, and he has come back. He has returned strong.
Well, I went up to Portland. They gave me about a 7-hour physical, so as far as I'm concerned, I'm 100% sound.
It is a calculated risk, but they felt that after the examination, he would fill their need.
Well, I'm looking very forward to playing with the Portland Trailblazers.
Good big man is hard to find, but that hasn't been the case over the last 2 years. The NBA draft in 1983, Ralph Sampson went to the Houston Rockets. And this year, Akeem Olajuwon will join him there, while Sam Bowie of Kentucky will be picked by Portland.
Portland chose Bowie. At the time, it wasn't seen as a mistake. His injuries were thought to be behind him, but the center hadn't been entirely honest about his physical condition.
And I can still remember them taking a little mallet, and when they would hit me on my left tibia, and I don't feel anything, I would tell them, but deep down inside, it was hurting. If what I did was lying, if what I did was wrong, at the end of the day, when you have loved ones that have some needs, I did what any of us would have done.
Chicago Bulls, the team that's ready to go next, and Michael Jordan seems to be the next one up.
Meanwhile, the Chicago Bulls, picking third, reluctantly selected Jordan. General manager Rod Thorne was desperate for a center but couldn't find a suitable trade. Left with no other option, he chose the 6'6" guard. Thorne's lukewarm endorsement of Jordan? We wish he were 7 feet, but he isn't. Jordan isn't going to turn this franchise around. He's a good offensive player, but not an overpowering offensive player.
This Clipper game marked the debut of the big fella for the Trailblazers, 7'1", Sam Bowie.
Sam will help us.
The man is going to lead to the promised land, no doubt about it.
Band away, and right there is Sam Bowie. Well, the crowd that came, remember that one.
That time he came down and got the block.
The jump shot, which he does so well.
Bowie from the top of the key.
Bowie with a turnaround, he got it.
And if he can continue at his current rate of improvement, all the talk of Michael Jordan may finally be put to rest.
And I have to say, for the first year or so after the draft, it didn't look like such a terrible pick, Sam Bowie, because he was fine and Michael Jordan broke his foot.
Bowie's rookie season was respectable, even as Jordan dazzled. But when Jordan suffered a foot injury, Portland had little reason to regret their choice. That is, until disaster struck Bowie. In his second NBA season, Bowie broke his left tibia. His season was over. In a year, things will fall into place, and I will show people how good I can be. Upon returning, he broke his right tibia. The following year, another injury sidelined him almost entirely. Over 4 seasons with Portland, Bowie played just 63 games. In 1989, Bowie's time in Portland ended. He was traded to the New Jersey Nets, where he found some success before retiring in 1995 as a Laker. But Bowie never lived up to his draft position.
Still wonder, and I know he wonders, how good he could have been without all the injuries that he suffered. He wasn't going to be Akeem Olajuwon. Could have been a pretty good starting center on a championship team with Clyde Drexler as his shooting guard. But it just wasn't to be.
While Bowie struggled, Jordan soared, winning 6 championships, including one against the Blazers, and revolutionizing basketball and pop culture. Portland's decision became a cautionary tale, especially since the 1984 draft also included future legends like Charles Barkley and John Stockton. Today, Sam Bowie is remembered as the man drafted before Michael Jordan, a title he'll carry forever, and one he likely wishes he didn't have.
When I wrote my book, he was the toughest one to track down because he doesn't like to talk about it. I finally got hold of him while he was picking up somebody at the school, I think, and he answered a phone and then realized he had to talk to me a little bit. The whole notion of the disappointment of his own career, feeling as if he let down the city of Portland, and just hearing it all his life. You know, I was picked ahead of Michael Jordan. I was picked ahead of Michael Jordan. It can't be pleasant to hear over and over again.
Anytime you mention my name, it's because of the Jordan draft. It's because of all the fractures. But every time I see Michael, I tell him if he would have never turned out to be the player he was, I wouldn't have to hear all this ridicule about being drafted before him. Michael, great guy, great ambassador for the game, and he'll always be a friend of mine.
Portland's misfortune with big men didn't end there. In 2007, they chose Greg Oden over Kevin Durant. Like Bowie, Oden's career was derailed by injuries. The big man curse seemed unbreakable. Through it all, no name epitomizes regret quite like Sam Bowie, the man drafted before Michael Jordan. The weight of that legacy is his to bear forever.